So we opened our door. I opened our door. I invited her in. And when she looked at me and said, "Thank you," I believed her. I even believed myself. But deep down, there was this feeling. This tiny whisper I ignored. You know the one. The one that tells you something's off, but you hush it because you don't want to seem crazy or jealous or insecure. I told myself, "You're overreacting." I told myself, "They're just talking." I told myself, "You're the one who asked him to help her, remember?" But those whispers, they never really go away, do they? They live under your skin. They wait. And on that day, when I saw the way he looked at her, when I saw the way she touched his hand and didn't let go right away, when I saw the smile that lingered just a second too long, something inside me cracked. And from that moment on, it was like I was watching a movie I couldn't pause or rewind. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't look away. And I couldn't tell anyone what I was feeling because I didn't even know if what I was feeling was real. Was I imagining it? Was I being dramatic? Was I projecting my own fears onto two people who were just being helpful? I didn't know. But I know now. I know now. And it's a memory that replays in my mind every night. Like a haunting melody I can't turn off. Like a question I'll never stop asking myself. What if I hadn't asked him to help her? So before I take you deeper into this story, before I tell you what happened next, before I confess what I did when the truth started unraveling, I want you to sit with this moment. This quiet, still moment, where everything seems fine, where you think you're safe, where betrayal hasn't quite taken shape yet. But it's coming. It's already there. You just haven't seen it clearly yet. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where the most unsettling truths are hidden in the choices we make. Because you won't want to miss what comes next. And believe me, it only gets heavier from here. When Melanie showed up, I felt sorry for her. She was a mess. Barely holding herself together after her divorce. Hair unbrushed. Eyes swollen from crying. Her voice soft, like she was afraid to take up space. I remember opening the door that night, seeing her standing there with just one suitcase and this look that said, "Please don't turn me away." And I didn't. Of course I didn't. She was family. Not close, but close enough. I told her to come in, that she could stay in the guest house for as long as she needed. I even made the bed myself. Put fresh towels in the bathroom. Gave her the bigger pillow because I knew she liked her head high when she slept. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being kind, helpful, human. But what I didn't admit, not even to myself, was that a part of me envied her. She had just walked away from a marriage that didn't serve her. She was starting over, yes, but there was something about her that felt alive. Raw, untamed. Like the pain she was carrying gave her this strange kind of freedom. And me? I felt stuck. Numb. Smiling through a life that didn't fit anymore. Daniel had been distant for months by then. Maybe even longer. We still talked. We still did the normal couple things, groceries, bills, small talk before bed, but it was all surface. There was no weight in his words anymore. No warmth in his touch. I missed him. But I didn't know how to reach for him without feeling like I was begging. So I just stopped trying. He was always helpful. Always the guy people leaned on. The one who fixed the sink when our neighbor's pipe burst, who jumped strangers' cars in the grocery store parking lot. So when Melanie's car started acting up, it was only natural that I said, "Daniel can take a look." He didn't even hesitate. Said sure, he'd do it after work. No problem. And I remember standing by the kitchen window that first evening, watching them. She was leaning over the hood of the car. He was explaining something about the engine, hands moving like they always do when he's focused. She laughed. He smiled. And it hit me. He hadn't smiled like that in a long time. Not at me. That night, I brushed it off. Told myself it was nothing. That I was just tired. But slowly, things started to shift. Subtle things. The way she lit up when he walked into the room. The way he lingered a second longer when handing her something. The inside jokes. The quiet moments they shared when they thought I wasn't paying attention. And I started watching, not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't trust the silence anymore. I was tired. Tired of feeling invisible. Tired of pretending. Tired of being the background in my own life. The house was quiet most days. I worked from home, so I heard everything. The laughter. The casual chats. The way her footsteps seemed to follow his. I kept telling myself she was just being friendly. That Daniel was just being helpful. That I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew better. And still, I said nothing. Because saying something meant acknowledging the ache in my chest. It meant admitting that the man I loved, my husband, had stopped choosing me long before Melanie ever walked through that door. There was this one evening. I'd made dinner, roasted chicken, his favorite. I set the table, lit a candle even though it was just the two of us. I wanted to feel close to him again. Wanted to feel like us. But he was late. Said Melanie had a flat tire. Said he had to help her out. Said he'd grab something on the way back. He never even asked what I cooked. I sat there at the table for an hour, staring at 2 full plates of food and a flame that flickered until it went out. And when I finally put everything away, I didn't cry. I just felt hollow. That was the beginning of the shift. Not just between them, but inside me. Because I started asking questions, not out loud, but to myself. What was I doing? Why was I holding on to a man who didn't even notice when I pulled away? Why was I the one always trying, always bending, always making room? And why? Why did it feel like Melanie had walked into my life and started living the parts one was too tired to hold? She wore her pain like perfume, something delicate but strong. And Daniel, he was drawn to it. To her. I saw it. I felt it. But I still told myself it was all in my head, because the truth was too heavy. And once you let it in, you can't unsee it. So I smiled. I kept playing hostess. I asked about her day. I told Daniel to help when she needed something. I even joked about how much time they spent together, laughing just enough to make it seem like I wasn't dying inside. But every night, when I lay in bed next to him, pretending to be asleep, I wondered how long I could keep pretending. Because something was happening, and I didn't know how to stop it. Or maybe I didn't want to, because deep down I needed something to break. I needed someone else to make the first move, so I wouldn't have to be the one to walk away. And that's when I started watching closer, listening harder, waiting for the moment when suspicion would become truth. And it did, but not in the way I expected, and not with the outcome I was prepared for. Because what I did next, that changed everything. Not just for them, but for me. It started with the car. Melanie's old Honda had been making this rattling sound for days. She kept mentioning it over breakfast, in that helpless voice she used whenever she needed something fixed. I was buttering toast when she brought it up again, casually, like it had just come to mind. Daniel was sitting across from me, scrolling on his phone, half listening. And without thinking, I said it. You could have Daniel take a look. He's good with stuff like that. I don't know why I offered him up like that. Maybe I was trying to be generous. Maybe I was trying to prove to myself that nothing was going on. That I had no reason to hesitate. He looked up, surprised, then smiled. Yeah, sure. I'll check it out after work. And just like that, it was decided. I passed him to her like a borrowed tool, like it meant nothing. Like I didn't feel something twist in my stomach the moment they agreed. That evening, I watched from the kitchen window. She was wearing this tight tank top, no bra, hair in a messy bun like she hadn't tried, but she had. I know she had. Women know. The way she laughed as he opened the hood, the way she leaned in just a little too close, there was an ease between them. A comfort that hadn't been there before. At first, it was innocent. Just 2 people by a car. But then she laughed. Not a quick laugh. Not a thank you laugh. It was long, drawn out, sweet, the kind of laugh that lingers in the air like perfume. The kind that makes a man feel seen. And Daniel, he looked at her. Not at the car. At her. I saw his hand brush hers when he handed her a wrench. Saw her fingers stay there, just a second longer than necessary. Saw his eyes flicker, not with guilt, with interest. And suddenly, I wasn't in the kitchen anymore. I was back at our old apartment, the first time he fixed my faucet. Me standing in the doorway, watching him work. Him looking up at me like I was the only person in the world. He used to look at me like that. Now he looked at her. And I stood behind the glass, holding a dish towel, pretending I didn't feel my entire body go cold. That laugh. It wasn't just gratitude. And the way he looked at her, it wasn't just kindness. It was familiarity. It was curiosity. It was everything I hadn't seen in his eyes in months. I stepped back from the window, sat at the edge of the counter, tried to slow my breathing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. But deep down I knew, because I remember how it feels to be pursued. I remember the shift, the tension, the dance. And what I saw out there between Daniel and Melanie was the start of something dangerous. I told myself it was just a car, just a favor, just helping out. But favors don't come with glances like that. And help doesn't come with hands that linger. Something had shifted. Something subtle. But it was there. And the worst part? I had invited it. I had handed him over. I had opened the door and watched it all unfold. And even then, even in that moment of quiet dread, I couldn't bring myself to stop it. Because part of me was still hoping I was wrong. That maybe I'd wake up the next day and see him looking at me like that again. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just a favor. It was the beginning of something I couldn't undo. And I had no idea just how far it would go. I told myself I was just being paranoid. That I was tired. That I was stretched too thin. That maybe I just missed feeling wanted. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That laugh. That look. His hand on hers. Why did it bother me so much if I trusted him? Why did I feel like I was standing outside of my own marriage, watching someone else step into my place? At night, when he slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time he reached for me first. The last time he looked at me without distraction, without his phone in hand, without me having to ask. There was a time when we couldn't keep our hands off each other. When we'd stay up talking until 2 in the morning, sharing secrets like they were sacred. He used to write me little notes and hide them in my bag. Thinking of you. Can't wait to see you tonight. He used to see me. And now he barely noticed when I walked into the room. I started questioning everything. Was I not enough anymore? Was it me? Had I let myself go? Had I become too quiet, too boring, too predictable? And then came the guilt. Because I was the one who told her she could stay. I was the one who told him to help her. I put the two of them in each other's orbit and then got upset when sparks started flying. What did I expect? I tried to act normal. Smiled when I had to. Asked about their day like I wasn't watching them closer than ever. Every interaction felt like a test. The way he handed her a coffee mug, did their fingers touch? The way she laughed at his jokes, was it too much? The way he answered her calls even when we were in the middle of a conversation, was it necessary? I became obsessed. Quietly, carefully, I started picking up on patterns. Noticing how often he mentioned her name. How he'd light up when talking about something funny she said. How his phone never left his pocket when she was around. I told myself I was reading too much into it. But then I'd catch her looking at him. That soft, admiring look women get when they think no one's watching. And sometimes, he looked back. I felt like I was being erased from my own life. And when that starts to happen, you look for crumbs. Any proof that you were once here. That you mattered. I started dressing nicer around the house. Wearing lipstick, even when we weren't going anywhere. Cooking his favorite meals and pretending it wasn't for him. But it was. It always was. And he barely noticed. I'd catch myself standing at the edge of the guest house sometimes, pretending to water the plants. Just listening, hoping I'd hear something, dreading that I might. There was one night. I saw them sitting outside on the porch. Just the two of them. The glow of the string lights casting shadows on their faces. They were laughing, sharing a drink. It looked intimate, familiar, like they belonged in that moment together. And I felt like the outsider. Like I was intruding on something that wasn't mine anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to him and wondered how I'd become invisible. How I'd faded so quietly that even I hadn't noticed until now. I didn't know what to say. How do you accuse someone of something you can't prove? How do you confront a smile? A glance? A feeling? So I stayed silent. But inside, I was screaming. Because the worst kind of betrayal isn't loud. It doesn't come with slammed doors or shouted words. It comes in pieces, in pauses, in growing distance. And in the moment you realize, the person you love might not be yours anymore. And still, I said nothing. Because part of me hoped I was wrong. But another part, the part one buried deepest, wondered if maybe I didn't want to be wrong at all. Because if he chose her, if he crossed that line, then I could stop holding on. And maybe that thought scared me more than anything else. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, quiet. Like water rising around your ankles before you realize you're drowning. Melanie started changing. She said she was just trying to feel like herself again. That after the divorce, she needed to reconnect with who she was. I nodded, smiled, even encouraged her. But the changes, they didn't feel like healing. They felt like blooming, specifically for an audience. Her clothes got tighter, shorter, more deliberate. She started wearing perfume again, something floral, sweet, unfamiliar. It lingered in the hallway on the couch cushions in the laundry room. I'd walk past Daniel and wonder if he could smell it too, or if he'd already gotten used to it. They spent more time together. Fixing this, fixing that. There was always something. A leaky faucet, a jammed window, a weird sound coming from the heater. And Daniel, always ready to help, never questioned it. He'd head over there right after dinner, sometimes before, sometimes even during. I stopped asking what needed fixing. The list never seemed to end. One afternoon, I decided to test them. She had a therapy session across town. Her car was still acting up, surprise. I looked at Daniel and said, "You should drive her." "I have a meeting." He didn't hesitate. "Yeah, of course." I watched them leave from the front steps. She was laughing at something before she even got in the car. He opened the passenger door for her. And when she slid in, her hand brushed his arm. It was soft, like a thank you, or maybe a promise. They didn't see me watching, but I didn't look away. I stayed there until the car disappeared around the corner. Until my chest felt hollow. I walked back inside and sat in the living room, surrounded by silence that felt heavier than ever. I told myself I was just being careful, just being smart. But the truth was, I didn't know who I was anymore. A wife? A spy? A stranger? That night when they got back, Melanie seemed lighter, happier. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes bright. Daniel didn't look at me when he walked past to the kitchen. Just said, "I'm starving," like that's all there was to say. I waited until the next day. She was out. Said she was going for a walk. I went into the guest house. It felt wrong, stepping into her space like that. But something inside me was louder than guilt, curiosity, desperation, survival. I opened her closet. Clothes hung neatly, perfectly arranged. I reached into a small drawer and pulled out a makeup bag. Inside was a lipstick. Deep red, not the shade she usually wore. It looked brand new. Then I saw the note, folded twice, tucked into the side pocket. It wasn't long, just 3 words. His name. No explanation. No context. Just, for Daniel. I stared at it, fingers trembling. I didn't know if it was a gift, a message, a memory, but I knew it wasn't meant for me to find. I sat on her bed, holding that note and that lipstick like they were evidence in a trial that hadn't even started yet. And still, I didn't cry. I just felt cold. I put everything back exactly the way I found it. Closed the drawers, smoothed the sheets. I walked back to the main house and made dinner. When Daniel came home, I smiled. I told myself I was only doing what any wife would do when she starts feeling like a guest in her own marriage. Because at that point, I wasn't trying to stop it anymore. I was waiting to see how far it would go. Waiting to see what they'd do when they thought I wasn't looking. Waiting for confirmation. And I knew it was coming. I could feel it, like a storm behind the walls, like something sacred breaking in slow motion. And somehow, the waiting was worse than the truth. Because when you love someone, watching them leave you silently is so much crueler than hearing the door slam shut. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bed felt colder than usual, though he was right there beside me, breathing slow, calm, like nothing in the world was wrong. I kept my back to him, eyes open, body still, listening, waiting. It was past midnight when I heard it, the creak of the floorboard near the hallway. Then a soft chuckle, muffled voices, movement. I held my breath. At first, I thought maybe he was just getting water. But I didn't hear the kitchen tap. Didn't hear the fridge. Just footsteps. Then the front door easing shut. I got out of bed, barefoot. My chest was tight, like my ribs were wrapped in wire. Every part of me told me to stay put, to close my eyes, to pretend this wasn't happening. But I needed to see it for myself. I needed the kind of truth that didn't hide behind silence. I moved through the hallway without turning on the lights. My hands grazed the walls for balance. The night air felt heavier than usual, like the house itself was holding its breath. When I stepped outside, I saw a faint glow coming from the guest house. The door wasn't shut all the way, just slightly ajar. And through that sliver, I saw them. Melanie was sitting on the couch, one leg folded beneath her, hair falling loose around her shoulders. She was laughing, quietly, softly. The kind of laugh that makes someone lean in closer. Daniel was sitting next to her. Too close. He had that look on his face. The one I hadn't seen in so long. Soft, present. Like he was somewhere real. And that somewhere wasn't with me. Their hands weren't touching. Not yet. But they were close enough. Fingertips hovering, aching for an excuse. And that was the moment. He turned his head. Slowly, almost like he felt me. And our eyes met through the window, through the night, through everything we used to be. For a second, I thought he'd pull away. Say something, move. But he didn't. He just stared. And I didn't move either. We stayed like that. Frozen. Him on one side of the glass. Me on the other. And in that silence, everything I feared was confirmed. But that wasn't the part that broke me. What shattered me was the calm that washed over me. The quiet in my chest. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shocked. I was relieved. Because for weeks, I'd been unraveling in slow motion, smiling through suspicion, pretending not to drown. And now I didn't have to pretend. Now I had permission to fall apart. I turned away first. Walked back to the house without making a sound. I climbed into bed and lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. But not from pain, from release. Because the worst had already happened. And all that was left now was the truth. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. The truth only gets heavier from here. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened. He came into the kitchen, kissed the top of my head like he always did, and asked if I wanted coffee. Just like that. Like he hadn't sat too close to her. Like our eyes hadn't locked through that window in the dark. Like I hadn't seen the truth with my own eyes. I said yes. Because what else do you say when your world splits quietly and nobody acknowledges the sound? Days passed in silence. Not the kind that comes from comfort. The kind that comes from pretending. He avoided eye contact. Talked about work, bills, groceries. He smiled when he needed to, laughed when the timing was right. But he never once looked at me the way he used to. He didn't even look at me the way he looked at her. And Melanie. She played her part perfectly. Sweet, warm, innocent. She still helped with dinner, still offered to clean up, still said good morning like she hadn't been the punchline in the joke I was living. The hardest part wasn't what they did. It was how normal they made it look. How easy it was for them to slip back into routine while I stood there, holding the pieces of a truth they refused to name. I waited 3 days before I said anything. We were in the bedroom, folding laundry. I don't know what gave me the courage. Maybe it was the way he folded her shirt, the one she left behind once and never took back. Maybe it was just the way he looked through me instead of at me. I asked him, "Is there something going on between you and Melanie?" He didn't even flinch. He looked at me and said, "You're overthinking everything." Just like that. Not no. Not, "How could you ask that?" Just a simple dismissal, like I was unstable, dramatic, emotional. Like the problem wasn't what I saw, it was that I saw it. He walked out of the room after that. Left me standing there with a pile of towels and a heat building in my chest that I couldn't name. I didn't follow him, because something shifted in me that day. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg him to explain. I just stopped waiting. I stopped waiting for him to return to me. Because I knew deep in my bones, I knew he already had. Just not to me. And with that knowing came something strange. Power. Not the kind you boast about. Not loud or flashy. But the kind that rises slowly in your gut. The kind that builds in silence. The kind that looks like detachment on the outside, but feels like reclaiming yourself from the inside. I stopped making his coffee in the morning. Stopped asking when he'd be home. Stopped pretending to care about the things he no longer shared with me. And Melanie. She noticed. Of course she did. But she didn't say anything, because women like her never do. They don't need to. They just wait until you remove yourself. Until the seat is vacant. So I made it vacant. But not for her. For me. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of being alone. I was scared of staying where I wasn't wanted. And once that fear shifted, once I stopped fearing the empty space he left behind, I realized I'd already survived the worst part. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. But the silence that followed it. Was it me? That question haunted me more than what I saw through the window. Did I stop showing up in the ways I used to? Did I pull away before he ever looked in her direction? Did I make it easy for him to forget me? I kept asking myself that over and over again. Not because I wanted to take the blame, but because I needed to understand how we got here. How we went from staying up late talking about our dreams to this quiet, cold distance where eye contact felt like effort. Maybe I did change. Maybe I became too tired, too serious, too predictable. But I also gave so much. Years of folding his shirts, making his favorite meals, biting my tongue when I wanted to scream. Years of pretending everything was okay because I didn't know how to start the conversation that might end